this inconvenience. I am Giuseppe Recchia. I teach digital health and therapeutics at the University Tor Vergata in Rome. And I'm also a co-founder of Davi Digital Medicine. That is a startup whose mission is to research and develop patient-facing digital health technologies to treat chronic diseases. The current pipeline of the startup comprises 3 candidates digital therapeutics, one for hypertension, one for chronic insomnia, and the other for motor rehabilitation. So why this focus from my side, of course, on patient-facing digital health technologies and chronic diseases? Well, chronic diseases are a public health emergency for any country in the world, especially in low and middle income countries. Their prevalence is increasing, and behaviors very often are the primary driver of the disease, of chronic diseases. So the current model of chronic diseases management is inadequate. It is a model where the patients must go to a center, to a healthcare center, to receive healthcare assistance. They must go to a center 2 or 3 times a year. Patients spend on average 2 hours per year with their healthcare provider. In the rest of their time, they need to care for themselves. So it is a model where clinical data are generated in an unreal life environment, and the model is unsupportive. Patients receive a lot of prescriptions on what to do, but they have little support on how to do, and so they need to care for themselves. Then it is a model where therapeutics are based almost exclusively on drugs, but you know that drugs cannot change dysfunctional behaviors. And above all, it is a model where patients are passive in managing their disease and therapy. So we need a new model, but any new model must start from what patients need. And they need not only to manage the medical aspects of the disease, but also their life roles and the psychological and emotional consequences, the impacts of chronic illness. So a new model must provide care at home, or at least care also at home on an ongoing basis, continuously. Must ensure that the data are generated in the real life of patients. And most important, the new model must provide support to manage disease and therapy, and must provide help to patients to change their dysfunctional behaviors. And above all, a new model must empower patients. So today, digital health technologies can support most of these conditions. So what do we mean by digital health technologies? A basic definition is all digital technologies at the intersection of software and health here. And a more formal definition from a technical report by ISO, that is the International Standard Organization, is systems that use computing platforms, connectivity software, and sensors for healthcare and related uses. Digital health technologies are hundreds of thousands, and they are very heterogeneous. They range from the wellness apps that you can download from Play Store or Apple Store, to Elon Musk's Neuralink, to Apple Watch, to the devices to monitor glycemia, to the systems to book in medical examinations, to the systems based on artificial intelligence to support the clinician decisions for diagnosis or therapy. In order to define development guidelines for these digital health technologies, we need to classify them. We need to classify all these technologies into smaller and more homogeneous categories. So a first classification was based on the 3 categories in 2019, 6 years ago. And the 3 categories were digital health, that is comprising the universe of all digital health technologies. So it is the omnicomprehensive term. Then digital medicine, that is a subset of digital health that requires some sort of evidence, and a subset of digital medicine were digital therapeutics. That is a subset able to improve clinical outcomes. However, this classification appeared to be too vague and generic. And so another classification was proposed some years later. This classification, which is the current classification that I use and that I invite you to use, is based on some differentiation criteria. First, the final user. Who holds the device? The employee of a healthcare company, or a nurse, or a physician, or a patient, or a caregiver. Second, the expected benefits, the claims. What does the device claim? Do they claim, for example, an effect on the clinical outcome? Or do they claim an effect on the processes of healthcare? Or do they claim an effect on well-being of the consumers? Or do they claim an improvement in efficiency of the healthcare company? So claims. The third criteria are the strength of evidence. What evidence, if any, is needed to support the claim? Evidence from here, randomized controlled clinical trials, that is true for digital therapeutics, for example, or just evidence from scientific literature, which is appropriate for other kind of devices. Fourth, what regulatory oversight is needed to support the claims and the strength of evidence? Does the device with this claim and with this intended use must be certified as a medical device according to the European regulation, of course, in Europe, or American regulations in US, or any other regulation on medical devices? And if so, if it is necessary to certify the device as a medical device, in which risk class? Class 1, the lowest risk, class 2, 2A and 2B, or class 3? And the final criteria, what is the main feature of the software? Does the software measure a digital biomarker, like a digital thermometer, for example, or does the software deliver an intervention, as drugs do? So on the basis of these 5 criteria, the Digital Therapeutic Alliance has identified 8 categories of digital health technologies. The first 2, this one, are related, involve software used by the employees of industries, pharmaceutical industries in category 1, or healthcare industries in category 2. And the third category is related to healthcare professionals, physicians, nurses, or other pharmacists. And the other categories are related to patients, and they are the patient-facing technologies that, in my view, have the greatest potential to innovate patient care. I will just mention health and wellness category, this one, and the patient monitoring, this one. I will skip digital diagnostics because they are still at a too early stage, and I will focus on care support and digital therapeutics. So let's start with the first category, of patient-facing digital health technologies. And this category, health and wellness, is actually not about patients and diseases, but consumers and well-being. These are the hundreds of thousands of health and wellness apps that you can download from a Play Store or Apple Store. They mainly cover fitness and exercise, mental health, nutrition and diet, sleep tracking, and women's health. Their aim is not disease, it is wellness. So they help you reach your wellness goals. And the criteria to select or to choose one of these apps are criteria for consumers, not for patients. They often have an appealing look, but they are not certified, and there is no evidence supporting their use. So this is health and wellness. The second category of patient-facing digital health technologies, and we are here, we are entering the area of patient and disease with patient monitoring apps. Patient monitoring is a well-known category. It is related to software that generate and may transmit patient data. I say may because it is if the patients allow physicians to receive data. So this data can be generated in a passive way by patients without any patient involvement through sensors in different devices, or they can involve actively patients, and there is an active role of patients who must fill in, for example, questionnaire like this one, or they must take tests as this one for recording the pain level. So patient monitoring, another a specific kind of patient monitoring is, for example, the digital pill. Sensors can also be in patient's environment, for example, to monitor allergens, or sensors can be inside traditional drugs, like in this case. And they are sensors for monitoring the patient adherence to treatment, to therapy. Next category is care supports. Care supports have, in my opinion, the key role to play in chronic diseases management. The effects of care supports are on processes, not on outcomes. If otherwise, they would be digital therapeutics. So they modify the processes of healthcare, like, for example, the awareness of the disease, the adherence to therapy, and so aspects that are related to processes. They act as patient navigators for patients that has to navigate within the chronic disease. They are also called health mentor, and they are apps for self-management of chronic diseases. They are apps that support and help patients to manage their care journey and therapy. And they may convert the what patients must to do, the doctor's order, into how they can do. So they are essential for chronic diseases in this way. Care supports may also be designed to improve drug use and adherence. Drug adherence is not an outcome, it is a process of the treatment. And they may help, so in this way, patients to perform, they may help drugs to perform better and to improve therapy outcomes. However, it is the drug, not the software, that is ultimately responsible for the clinical benefit. Since they help drugs to perform better, sometimes they are called digital companion of the drugs. Now, I come to the last category, and to the category that is probably the best known and for sure the most mentioned, that is digital therapeutics. The term digital therapeutics was first used in a scientific context in 2015, and this is the first paper mentioning the term digital therapeutics. In 2017, 2 years later, the FDA approved the first digital therapeutics in the US, Reset by Peer Therapeutics, for the treatment of addiction. And in the same year, 2017, the Digital Therapeutic Alliance was founded. Digital Therapeutic Alliance is a no-profit organization based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but with an international sound, an international activity. In 2019, the first classification of digital therapeutics that we have seen before was published. 1 year later, in Germany, the Digital Health Technologies Act, the law on digital health technologies, came into force, and digital therapeutics and care supports also may be reimbursed in Germany. Now they are reimbursed also in France, in UK, and other countries like, for example, Belgium or Japan or South Korea and other countries. Finally, in 2023, the new classification of digital health technologies was published, we have seen before, and above all, ISO, that is the International Organization for Standardization, issued the technical report 11147, providing the formal definition of digital therapeutics and an analytical description of its features. This is the definition that consists of 4 sentences, which are essential to know in order to define properly what digital therapeutics are and what digital therapeutics are not. So let's see these 4 sentences within the definition. First, digital therapeutics are health software, like all the other digital health technologies that we have just seen. They interact, the software interact with patients in different ways, with different digital forms. Digital forms such as an app on a mobile app on the smartphone, or a video in this device, or a chatbot. So the forms with which the software interacts with patients are different, maybe different. Second, digital therapeutics are designed to treat diseases. The most common therapeutic indications in Germany, for example, after 3 years of experience, are, and these are taken from a paper published in Nature Digital Medicine journal. The most frequent are mental diseases, anxiety, depression, or rehabilitations, or migraine, for example, or diabetes, tinnitus or dizziness, and other minor indications. Third, digital therapeutics treat diseases by generating and delivering a medical intervention. This is specific for digital therapeutics. It is different from the other categories. They provide a medical intervention based in most cases on cognitive and behavioral therapy. So digital therapeutics are an alternative way to deliver cognitive and behavioral therapy. Otherwise, it is the psychotherapist delivering this kind of therapy. And in other cases, the active ingredient, the medical intervention, may be based on serious games. Serious games, like in this way. Serious games are very useful when the medical intervention is based on repetitive exercise that by definition may be boring. And so you can dress the exercise with a game. The process is called gamification. It is important to remember that a medical intervention is not just a list of lifestyles recommendations that patients can choose and can follow whenever he or she wants. A medical intervention is a sequence of actions that the patient must do in sequential order and within a predefined time frames. These are the active ingredient of the therapeutic, of the digital therapeutics. And finally, and most important for all, the medical intervention must have a positive therapeutic impact on patient health. Therapeutic impact that must be proven, they must be demonstrated. And it must be proven with clinical trials, with randomized control clinical trials. Like in this case, for example, this is a trial with in chronic insomnia. This is the control. The control is patient education. It is not a placebo, so the patient education may have an effect on the patient on the sleep. And you can see here from baseline, after 9 weeks post-assessment at the end of the treatment. The treatment here is based on cognitive behavioral therapy, follow up at 6 months and follow up at 12 months. You can see an improvement in time in the control, but if we go to the digital therapeutic, we can see a much more profound effect, baseline, the same, post-assessment at 9 weeks, follow-up at 6 weeks, and follow-up at 12 weeks. Here, it is important to observe that the effect from a digital therapeutic is prolonged in the time. It is maintained at 12 months, 1 year. That means 10 months after the end of the treatment. So it is important that the effect is proven with the randomized controlled clinical trial. And it is important also that the results of the clinical trial are published in medical journals like PRAX, exactly like PRAX and like as in this case. It is a fundamental principle that the effect on outcomes must be proven for regardless of the technology supporting the therapy. The technology may be chemical, as in drugs, may be biological, as in some drugs, may be digital, as in digital therapeutics, but in every case, they must be proven with randomized controlled clinical trial. There is no exception for digital. The patient-facing application, this one, is the key element of a digital therapeutics, but it is not the only one. Digital therapeutics are prescribed by physicians, and physicians has a dashboard like this one to follow the patient's therapy and to call patients for checking, for control if necessary. These are the characteristics that we have just seen. For example, of this digital therapeutic to treat depression, that is the praxis, or of these digital therapeutics for attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, ADHD, called Endeavor in children, or for the characteristics for these digital therapeutics, Cure app to treat hypertension in Japan, or for this digital therapeutic, Somrist, to treat insomnia. And also, these are the characteristics of digital therapeutic candidates like this one or this one that are part of our pipeline. I'm going toward the end of my speech. So, and with this recommendation, it is crucial not to confound care supports and digital therapeutics. I told you that care supports deal with processes and digital therapeutics deal with outcomes. The appearance, the look, what you see on your smartphone, the phenotype may be the same. So there is no difference in what you see. The difference is what is behind the genotype, I would say, that are the evidence on outcomes based on randomized controlled clinical trials and the active ingredient, the mechanism of action, the way the benefit is achieved. That is care support. In the care support is indirect. They help doctors or they help drug to perform better, to improve performance. While in digital therapeutics, oh, sorry, here there is a mistake. This is digital therapeutics. In digital therapeutics, the improvement is obtained in a direct way. In conclusion, patient-facing digital health technologies, mainly patient monitoring, care supports, and digital therapeutics, can be enablers of a new model of chronic disease management that is decentralized. It is providing continuously healthcare. It is providing data from a real life where the patients live. It is a supportive model. It is helping patients to transform the what to do in how to do. It is a model where you helping patients to change dysfunctional behaviors beyond drugs activity. And above all, it is a model empowering patients. To implement this model, of course, we need time. This model will take time, will take education and information for both healthcare professionals and patients. Education and information are crucial. Also, reimbursement in most cases is necessary to enable the new model. But I believe that this is the way. And for those of you who would like to go deeper into these aspects that I've just presented, I leave some references about digital therapeutics and about their use. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Giuseppe, for your wonderful presentation, and that really helps to the audience. Just a few questions, like so this application is used by the pharma companies or the hospitals.
Well, we are talking about application used by patients. Pharma companies are very interested in this kind of software, in this kind of technologies, because they can be used together with drugs. So you can develop also an association between drugs and digital therapeutics, or you can have even a combination of drugs and digital therapeutics. And of course, if you use together drugs and digital therapeutics, you can get a clinical effect going beyond the drug, so more than the drug alone can provide. If you use the drug together with the care support, probably care support is a must for drugs. Any drug to be used in chronic diseases, to treat chronic diseases, must have a care support, a digital companion, let's say, specific for that drugs. It is a software, a care support, helping the drug to perform better. To perform better, that means that the patient will use the drug in the proper way, because with care support, he or she can see how to use the drug. And the software will help the patients to be adherent to the treatment. there are reminders, there are different ways. So pharmaceutical companies have a great interest in these technologies, both in care supports and in digital therapeutics.
Great to know that aspect as well. That was so informative. So anyone from the audience, do they have any questions? Otherwise, we are good to launch the poll. Please take some time to answer the questions in the poll.